Now, in chapter 8 of Political Treatise, Baruch Spinoza does also tell us of the advantages that aristocracy has as a form of government, especially as compared to monarchy. Um, and in another chapter of the book, there is, and I think I've mentioned this in a previous video, Baruch does tell us that some of the weaknesses of monarchy is that the person in charge or at the topmost position tends to, there's a law, there tends to be given a law that is too heavy for a single individual to carry. And often they are also having their own issues, personal issues. Maybe they can be sick or things like that, and that makes a monarchy like rely on a council that is not formal. Basically, the king goes ahead and forms this informal, behind the scene council of advisors or something like that, which in itself is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because then the king gets to get advice from different people, but it's a bad thing because these people advising the king are not known to the public, and it's never known how they might influence the monarchy so that it benefits them, and then at the disadvantage of the public. Now, in this chapter, he talks of aristocracy having an advantage when it comes to things like that. He says, for example, the aristocracy does not suffer because of the inadequacies of a single individual. Like a dominion is not going to suffer because the king is sick, or the king just died, or the king is mad, or things like that. Because now, instead of the powers being in the hands of a single person who is susceptible to things like sickness and things like that, now the power is in the hands of a council, a body that is made up of many people, and that balances out any problems that individuals might have because decisions are made through voting. So one advantage it gives is that the dominion doesn't suffer because of issues that an individual might have as a human being. He also says another advantage is that the authority becomes everlasting, that it becomes kind of immortal, like it doesn't start and end because an individual died and then another person needs to be put in place. With an aristocracy, this council is always present. Even when one individual or two die or they are sick, they are easily replaced, and that doesn't really affect the functioning of the entire body. It's an argument he makes. He also says, but there's something about it being everlasting that he talks about in several parts of the chapter. And it is that with an aristocracy, the power never revert back to the multitude, the public. It doesn't. It always remains with the council. In case of the monarchy, when the monarchy dies, for a moment that power kind of reverts to the public, to the multitude. You can say the same about democracy, especially as we understand democracy today. After every 5 years, after every 4 years, after 7 years, depending in which country we are talking about, the public goes back to takes back their authority, and then gives it, I think there's a name it's not really authority, there's a name for it, but they take it and then they give it to somebody else or the same person, they re-elect or elect. But with aristocracy as described by Baruch, that never happens. These aristocrats are chosen at the start of a dominion, and they never go home. They remain there, and in fact, the ones he described is that these people end up being the ones to choose replacements of whoever who passes away or is sick or cannot perform their functions. Then it's the rest of the aristocrats to decide who to replace them. So the public, the multitude, kind of loses their control over this authority completely, like it is the case with the king, but he kind of puts it in a way that with the king is kind of like a little bit not as bad as with an aristocracy, an aristocratic form of government. Another advantage he mentions about the aristocratic form of government, especially as compared to monarchy, is that it is consistent with making and implementing laws. With a monarchy, especially an absolute monarch, their word is the law, basically. But they are human and they are subject to emotional whatever, and that might influence the laws they put in place. But with an aristocracy, it is consistent because these laws are then considered through reasoning and debate, and then the best ideas come forth and are then accepted and voted for. So he says that makes aristocratic forms of governments more consistent, especially when it comes to forming and implementing laws.